Pythons that showed up in Florida scare absolutely all the locals. They kill pets, wipe out native wildlife, basically make life really hard. But there are those who refuse to put up with these invaders and started fighting back. The Furry Avengers. Scientists in Florida have long made a habit of tracking snakes. They had this one python named Loki, its length almost 13 feet, weight like that of a calf. They attached a tracker to him so he wouldn't get lost. The males of these snakes act like living guides. They find the females, and in spring those lay up to 100 eggs. The scientists were counting on the idea that by following Loki, they could track down a female, find her clutch, and destroy it. The signal led the scientists to the tropical forest near Naples, Florida. They walked on, sure they were about to stumble upon Loki with a female and get down to work, but what they found instead was unexpected. As they came closer, the scientists saw Loki. He was stretched out to his full length, except the head was gone. The researchers were completely baffled. A huge python weighing over 44 pounds was dead. Its head, along with part of the neck, had been torn off, and the body was covered with pine needles. And it was done in such a way that it was obvious right away. This wasn't an accident, not the wind. Someone had deliberately made that kind of cover. The scientists never expected anything like this. The snake they were planning to use in their work had become a victim. But who could take on such a large creature? They had to call in a specialist from the Wildlife Service to give an expert opinion. Usually a python is seen as the embodiment of death. It strangles any prey. But this time, the tables turned. It ended up without a head. In Florida's forests, an invisible war is raging, and some have started to fight back against the pythons. Loki was clear evidence of that. Before talking about who's ripping the heads off pythons, it makes sense to figure out where these snakes came from in the first place, and why there's such a war around them. The story of Burmese pythons in Florida is probably the biggest biological invasion in the U.S. It all didn't start yesterday. The first mentions of these snakes in Florida go back to the 1930s. Back then, it was just isolated encounters, nothing that really scared anyone. In the 1970s came the boom of exotic pets, monkeys, parrots, lizards, and of course snakes. The Burmese python looked impressive. Massive, brightly patterned, tame when young. People bought these snakes, and then when they realized they could grow 13 to 16 feet long and weigh over 44 pounds, they let them loose straight into the swamps. The Everglades turned out to be the perfect home for them. It's warm there. There's plenty of water and shelter and no shortage of prey. And then in 1992 came Hurricane Andrew, one of the most devastating storms in U.S. history. It tore down everything in its path, including a python breeding facility. Hundreds of snakes broke loose. That's when the real invasion began. In the 1990s, pythons started turning up in the Everglades increasingly more often, but for a long time, people argued, are they breeding or not? Only in 2000 was it officially confirmed. Yes, this is now an established population. And after that, the numbers just kept climbing. From 2008 to 2010, more than 30,000 python sightings were recorded. These days, estimates of their numbers range anywhere from 30 to 300,000. The swamps are literally crawling with them. How did it get so bad? Because pythons eat everything that moves. They're not picky about what they hunt. People have found all sorts of things in their stomachs. Birds, rats, raccoons, even alligators. They have no limits. Anything they can swallow, they do. And these creatures have a perk: rapid growth. While they're still low-level, young snakes can still become prey for herons or birds of prey, but once they level up by growing, their weak spots almost disappear. They become nearly invincible. What's especially scary is that their breeding never stops. A female lays 20 to 50 eggs every 2 years, lives up to 20 years, and manages to leave dozens of offspring, each growing into a 13-foot monster. Biologists say controlling them by catching them is almost impossible. Even if you remove hundreds of snakes, the population hardly goes down. The impact of this invasion can be seen in the local wildlife. The Everglades used to be full of raccoons, opossums, bobcats, rabbits. Now, nothing but emptiness. Scientists compared animal numbers before and after the invasion, and the results were grim. Back in the 1990s, raccoons were everywhere. But by the 2000s, their numbers had dropped by 90 to 100%. In other words, some populations have almost vanished. The case of the marsh rabbit, which pythons have pushed to the critically endangered category, is especially telling. A similar story with foxes. Their numbers have plummeted. We witnessed a rare sight. In front of us lay a female python almost 16 feet long. Her body was swollen, like she had swallowed a barrel. Inside was a white-tailed deer weighing 77 pounds. We knew that pythons could eat all kinds of animals, but seeing a snake take on such a large deer whole, that's really pushing its limits. The prey weighed almost 2/3 as much as the snake itself. The jaws stretched about 10 inches, every ligament and bone straining to the limit. The deer slowly disappeared, as if being sucked into an abyss. It all went slowly, but there was no turning back. That's when it became clear why the python is called the pinnacle of evolution. It can stretch its body to unbelievable limits. It's like the ecosystem got a new update, and the balance got broken. Animals that used to be completely ordinary are now teetering on the edge of extinction. Meanwhile, the python has stepped into the role of a final boss. It doesn't just take out its prey, it also pushes competitors out of the game, snatching their resources. Even alligators, usually called the rulers of this territory, are no longer absolute leaders. Sometimes they end up as prey themselves, and sometimes they engage in direct duels with the python over food. There are fights on record where both animals fought till the end and died together. But actually, pythons have almost no natural enemies. People try to trap them, put restrictions in place. In 2012, the US government officially banned Burmese python imports. But it was already too late. They'd settled in. On top of that, some research shows they're even adjusting to the cold. After the 2010 freeze, some snakes perished, but some survived, the ones who could hide in soil or water. Some biologists think that traits helping them withstand cold are now taking hold in the population. So these snakes could be heading further north soon. In the Everglades, a python crushes everything in its path, survives in any conditions, and multiplies faster than people can catch it. And that's exactly why what happened to Loki eventually happened. Because a war works both ways. Even a giant like that isn't invincible. Someone came along and put it in its place. Let's go back to that day when Loki was found. The first question was obvious. Who could have pulled this off? 51 pounds of muscle and scales? Not the kind of prey you catch easily. Suspicion immediately fell on the local cats, either a cougar or a bobcat. Both predators are strong, fast, but there wasn't much to go on. To get an answer, the researchers set up a camera near Loki's body, and the next day, it all came out. An adult bobcat stepped into the frame cautiously. It seemed like it was coming back to its dinner and acted as if the place belonged to it. That made it clear the bobcat was the one who ripped the python's head off. And this isn't merely unusual, it's the first recorded instance in Florida of a bobcat killing and eating a Burmese python. As the local media later reported, this finding turned into a symbol. The animals that snakes have been crushing for years are beginning to strike back. The bobcat's a medium-sized predator, yet it's known as a great hunter. It typically weighs 22 to 33 pounds, with the largest males reaching 66 pounds. Its length rarely goes beyond 3 feet, and its shoulder height is around 1.5 feet. But its power isn't in its weight. The bobcat relies on nimbleness, patience, and a flawless strike. It moves nearly without a sound, can lie in wait for hours, and strikes quickly, right when its prey reveals a weakness. A bobcat is easy to recognize: short tail with a dark tip, a spotted coat from gray to reddish, ear tufts, and characteristic marks on the face. They typically live up to 14 years. Each cat has several save points, tree hollows, thick bushes, or caves to take cover in. Females stick to a small area, roughly 6 square miles, and males cover 5 times larger. They patrol their borders often and leave markings, like planting little flags. The hunting mode kicks in at night. In summer, the prey includes rabbits, squirrels, raccoons. In winter, birds, especially migratory ones. Sometimes a bobcat can even eat carrion. It acts wisely and won't get into a fight it can't win. The trouble is that pythons have claimed everything the bobcat eats. The rabbits, raccoons, birds. The snakes are wiping out the food supply, wiping out the resources. And sometimes it even gets to the point where the pythons eat the bobcats. After what happened with Loki, it was clear that bobcats don't just defend themselves, they can attack pythons too. But it all started earlier, back in 2021. That's when cameras recorded something that no one had ever seen before. In Big Cypress Preserve, a bobcat approached a python's nest. The snake wasn't around. The camera showed the feline getting close, sniffing, and tearing apart the eggs. It ate some, crushed dozens more underfoot. When it was finished, it covered the nest again and left, saving them for later. A few days later, the cat came back, but this time the nest was guarded by a female python, over 13 feet long and weighing more than 110 pounds. She was coiled up and immediately lifted her head, ready to strike. For a bobcat weighing less than 22 pounds, such a meeting could have been fatal in a second. In the footage, you can see the snake trying to strike, but the cat manages to jump back. Scientists later removed the python, and the bobcat kept coming to that spot for several more weeks. This was the first documented case of a bobcat hunting specifically for Burmese python eggs. Nothing like this had been observed before. Biologists have long known that bobcats can steal eggs from other animals, but to go into a python's nest? That was new. Scientists called it a sign that local bobcats are starting to adapt and look for ways to take on pythons. It's hard to take down an adult python, but the eggs are fair game. By raiding the nest, the cats prevent the snakes from reproducing. But the bobcat isn't the only animal that started fighting back. Alligators have always lived in the Florida swamps. They've been the rulers here for thousands of years. Pythons challenge that order, but they haven't managed to take over completely. Cameras and eyewitnesses have repeatedly caught alligators pulling huge snakes out of the water, biting them, breaking their bones and spine. In 2024, a video surfaced online showing an alligator nicknamed Godzilla dragging a python almost its own length through the water. And even earlier, in 2019, another alligator was caught on camera swinging a dead snake like a rope. Even monsters like pythons turn into prey in an alligator's jaws. Scientists actually proved this using real research. They put transmitters on small pythons and tracked them. Some signals got cut off inside alligators' stomachs. Biologists found the remnants of the devices right there. That means alligators really do hunt snakes and kill them, especially the young ones. Not only the big predators joined this war, other snakes aren't sitting on the sidelines either. In 2021, a pit viper was caught in Florida with a tiny python inside it, fitted with a tracker. A year later, a king snake swallowed a 1-month-old python. Biologists followed the signal until the device passed through the hunter's body. They might not defeat a full-grown python, but for the youngsters, they've become a real threat. There are other unexpected rivals too. In some reserves, bear tracks were found near places where pythons had died. Scientists say that most likely black bears also kill the snakes, or at least finish them off. Either way, it's another enemy for pythons that hadn't even been considered before. Don't forget about the birds. Many of Florida's predatory species hunt young snakes. They're no match for an adult python, but eggs and hatchlings are easy prey. Each female python can lay dozens of eggs, and if birds take out even some of them, it slows down the spread of snakes. In 2021, cameras caught a bobcat eating a clutch, but eagles and herons do their part too, pulling little snakes out of the grass and water. It all adds up to the complete picture. Animals in Florida are figuring out how to fight off the invaders. At first, pythons were something new and frightening, and the animals had no clue how to respond. But time passes, and animals learn. The ones brave enough take risks and gain food and experience. The weak retreat, and the strong reinforce their new skills. There's another less obvious enemy of the python: cold. Florida is usually sunny, but sometimes a cold front comes through and everything changes. On those days, the weaknesses of the Everglades top invader, the Burmese python, become clear. These snakes came from the humid jungles of Southeast Asia, where it's hot almost year-round. Their bodies are built for heat. Muscles, breathing, even digestion depend on high temperatures. Once the thermometer drops below 59 degrees Fahrenheit, the python seems stuck in its own body. It stops moving actively, curls into a tight spiral, and tries to wait it out. At 50 degrees Fahrenheit, it barely reacts to anything around it. Freezing temperatures are deadly for pythons. Those who fail to find shelter often die. Snakes have been found in tortoise and armadillo burrows. There, the earth holds on to leftover warmth. But safe spots are few, and not everyone manages to squeeze into a hiding place. Those left on the surface become easy prey, for a bobcat, for instance. Pythons have long taken over the local animals' food supply, eating just about everything. But in the cold, the tables turn. A python, once a threat, can suddenly find itself in danger. But there's a worrying sign: part of the population is starting to adapt. Biologists are noticing individuals who survive the cold, even though that used to be impossible. Changes linked to cold tolerance have already been found in their genes. This means that one day, maybe, pythons could move further north. But for now, cold vulnerability remains, and it's exactly what gives the Everglades a chance. Every cold day turns into a test. Some snakes die, others lose their clutches, and some retreat into burrows and disappear for a long time. But the key thing is that local animals get a window when the hunter becomes the hunted. For the ecosystem, it's a rare pause, a chance to take back control. What's important to understand right now? In Florida, animals are just learning how to deal with pythons. These are the first steps. But the ones who handle it consistently are humans. And among humans, there's a woman who's killed 1,000 of these snakes. Donna Khalil is often called the ultimate nightmare for Burmese pythons, and she's the first professional python hunter in the U.S. When a pilot program for catching these snakes launched in Florida in 2017, only 25 people were invited. Donna Khalil was among them. She brought a resume listing martial arts, participation in python catching competitions, and experience she'd been building since childhood. She grew up in a military family, running through wild places from an early age, fishing and hunting. It's no surprise that she turned out to be one of the most successful participants in the whole program. In the first 3 months, she and her colleagues caught 163 snakes. The result exceeded all expectations of the authorities, and the program went from temporary to permanent. Today, about 100 official python hunters work in Florida, but Donna Khalil's name is always at the forefront. Hunting usually kicks off with long hours spent cruising the dikes and trails in a pickup. Khalil uses a special platform on the bed of her blue Ford F-150, one she designed herself. From there, it's easier to scan the thick brush. The main tactic is to shine a powerful spotlight along the road, looking for the faint rainbow glint of scales. As soon as the silhouette appears, there's no time to hesitate. There's no room for mistake. Even a small snake, just 5 feet long, can sink its teeth in and coil around your leg. Khalil has had hundreds of such encounters. Sometimes the python tries to break free, bites, or wraps its body in coils, but in the end, it almost always loses. As already mentioned, Khalil has 1,000 pythons to her name. Every time, the procedure's the same. First, she takes a photo, then the snake is put into a sturdy bag, and then into the vehicle. The final stage is euthanasia, according to strict rules, so the animal doesn't feel pain. She never shows this part to the public. Over the years of hunting, her body got used to the wounds. She's been bitten dozens of times. Her arms and legs still carry marks from snake teeth. Once a python coiled around her neck. Another time it threw her into a swamp. That fight was the one to remember. The snake was almost 20 feet long, and Khalil managed to get away. Over the years, volunteers started joining the huntress. She gladly takes newbies with her, teaches them how to spot snakes in the dark, move the right way, and not be afraid. Many of those who went to the swamps with her for the first time ended up staying in the program for years. Among them was a girl named Tanya Tutans, who now goes hunting with Khalil several times a week. The job doesn't pay well, it's close to minimum wage and sometimes even less, taking all expenses into account, but money's never been Khalil's goal. She hunts to protect her homeland. On average, it takes a hunter 10 hours to find a single python. It's hard work, with lots of fruitless nights and miles of roads without a single find. But Khalil never gives up. Even coming home empty-handed, she goes out searching again. "We can't afford to do nothing," she says. But you know what's the most interesting part of this whole story? Snakes have been released again in Florida. We're talking about eastern indigo snakes. Their strength is that they eat pretty much anything in their way, including other snakes. In mid-May, 42 indigo snakes were released in North Florida, the biggest batch in the program's history. They were raised at the Orient Center for Indigo Conservation in Lake County, which has been working to reintroduce this species for the 9th year in a row. For an ordinary person, this might seem odd. Why introduce even more snakes where there are already plenty of predators? But biologists have an answer. Indigo snakes are non-venomous, big and strong. They hunt rats, lizards, small birds. most importantly, they eat other snakes, including venomous ones. A rattlesnake, which people fear, is prey for the indigo snake. Wherever this predator shows up, the natural balance starts to restore itself. A few years ago, biologists recorded what they had been waiting for a long time. They found young indigo snakes in the wild, born from snakes that had been released. This means they not only survived, but also managed to find each other and reproduce. Indigo snakes are important. They're a key tool in the fight against invasive species, including pythons. Of course, they won't take down a full-grown python, but young ones are fair game. On top of that, they reduce the numbers of other snakes, which in turn eases the pressure on birds and small animals. Indigo snakes have such a varied diet that they become all-around hunters, a kind of natural regulator. That's why bringing them back makes sense. Where humans can't handle it, the snakes take over. Yes, there's still a lot we don't know. What share of the released animals are going to make it? How fast will they spread into new territories? When will their numbers be enough to really affect the ecosystem? Still, the fact that they're reproducing in the wild already proves the strategy is sound. You owe me a like. See you later.